All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Debbie, and I'm from the Healthcare and Science Career Community. And I am so excited to be here today with Juliann Krupa from the Shedd Aquarium. And we are here to talk about her career journey. Juliann, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with me today.
No problem. Hi, everyone.
Yeah, welcome. So can you tell us a little bit more about your job? Explain what you do on a daily or weekly basis.
Sure. So currently I'm a learning specialist at the aquarium. So that means I work in our learning department. And one of the things that's really great about my job is that I get to work with all kinds of learners of all ages. So um, I just had a program this morning with a pre-K group, but I also do things all the way up to working with adults and those lifelong learners as well, and everything in between. So I design and implement educational programming. So everything from Scouts programming to when we're in person, behind the scenes tours. Right now we're doing tons of virtual programming with schools where we stream from live from our exhibits into classrooms, or if students are still at home, to their devices at home. Uh, to things like field programs as well in the summer. So we have a lot of field summer camps or some programs where we work with high schoolers out in the city or even further afield. So it's a little bit of everything, which is great. It's always something new to work on.
Cool, that sounds exciting. Can you tell me a little more about your career journey and kind of how you came to this job at the Shedd Aquarium, maybe what you studied or worked in along the way?
Sure. So I got a bachelor's degree in biology and environmental science. And I was doing a lot of field research during my undergrad career and a little bit afterwards. Studying things like population biology and marine protected areas uh, in my undergrad. But while I loved working in the field, I quickly realized that most of that work is time spent
Mm,
grant writing and searching for money and um, kind of the grind of that whole process. And so decided to take my interest in science elsewhere, and that's how I kind of ended up working at aquariums. I worked in animal care for a while. So I did some internships and part-time roles where I was on the animal care and training staffs. And what I found out during that time is what I actually liked about that role were the times when I got to talk with the guests that were visiting the aquarium and got to share what I knew about these animals, share about the amazing conservation work that the organizations were doing. So those times when I was interacting with people were really my favorite times. And what I dawned on me one day was like, oh, I think I'm actually interested in the educational aspect of this work. And so I worked at a few children's museums for a while to sort of hone my educational and facilitation skills, and decided to go back to school at DePaul to get my master's in science education to sort of really bring my career experiences full circle and have that degree behind my experience. Mhm.
cool. Well, I know you were talking about how you really like to interact with guests and with people and sharing the work that you're doing. But what can you tell us what you find most rewarding about your job and maybe most challenging?
What I find most rewarding about my job, I mention this always too, is that it's always something a little bit different.
Mhm.
So it's always different projects, but it's also always different people. So I get to meet students of all ages and all backgrounds, guests of all ages and all backgrounds, and they are all coming to the experience with experiences and stories of their own. So often they'll share a story with me and I'll say, oh gosh, I never knew that about this animal, or that's a really cool interaction you had. So I'm always learning from them as well. And I think just like the volume of people I get to interact with is really rewarding. Um, and things that are challenging, it's one of the biggest challenges of being an informal educator
Mhm.
is the time restrictions we have with our learners. So in a classroom setting, you have a whole year or multiple years even sometimes to build a relationship and really see learning progress from one point to another. But a lot of times at the aquarium, I see people for An hour. Yeah, on some of our programs it's a little bit longer, but at the max, really, it's a week, maybe during summer camp or during some of our field programs. So that can be challenging. It's to when you're talking about uh, designing and reaching learning goals. It's like, okay, what can I do with the limited time I have with this learner?
Sure. Cool. Thank you.
Hmm.
So you talked about what led you to pursue your master's in science education from
Hmm.
DePaul. We're so always excited to talk to alums. What was it like to return to school to graduate school after a few years away from your undergraduate studies?
Yeah, because it had been a while. I didn't go right into it. It had been a full 10 years
Mhm.
since my undergraduate degree. And so getting back into the routine of doing homework, I think was definitely a challenge, but it was also really nice. I'm the kind of person that always likes going to school. So it was really nice to be surrounded by classmates again and hear their stories, and to just be on that schedule of like always going to class and learning something new from professors. So it was a bit of an adjustment too, trying to figure out how I would do my schoolwork around my full-time work schedule as well. But DePaul actually made it really flexible in that I could take my time with the degree. So I ended up most quarters, I just took one class at a time since I was also still working full time.
Sure.
Mhm.
That's good to know. And thinking about that as well, how do social justice or the Vincentian values that we talk about so much at DePaul, how do they inform your current work at the Shedd Aquarium?
Yeah, it's a big part of it. So I actually also at DePaul was fortunate enough to take the Value Center Leadership Certificate program through the Hayes Center,
Mhm.
um, and that Vincentian values has and servant leadership has like a lot of really great parallels with nonprofit work, which is what museums fall into, um, about how you manage a just and fair organization, not only for the people that work at your organization but for the people you serve. So at Shedd we talk a lot about how can we increase access to our programming, whether that's the physical aquarium or reaching people in their communities, just and reaching people wherever they're at. So it is something that comes into our work quite a lot.
Great. What advice do you have for students who might be interested in a career in science education and museum education and kind of your worlds?
Yeah, there's a lot of opportunities in informal education. And I think that if you're interested in maybe teaching, but maybe don't want to quite make the commitment or leap
Mhm.
into teaching into a classroom, on one hand, it's being in informal ed is a great way to test out if you would like to teach. But also if you're not necessarily interested in teaching in the formal classroom, there's all kinds of opportunities at museums, forest preserves, historical houses. Yeah, places like the Jane Addams Hull House always have interpretive education programs. So there's a lot of opportunities in areas that are perhaps not ones you might think of right off the top of your head.
Sure. And would you recommend trying to get an internship or volunteer experience?
Yes, that is still key in the museum and informal ed industry. Um, a great way to get started is just volunteering as well. So if you have another job or something else you're doing, even just volunteering for a day or a couple days a month at an organization that you are interested in really helps you with getting in the door when positions do open. Mhm.
Sure. Absolutely. Kind of related, I guess, are there any other kind of career paths in science education or museum education that students might not know about, or things that you've kind of seen colleagues in the field find really rewarding in terms of
Mhm.
career paths?
Um, well, it's not necessarily about related to science education, but one thing I always do like to share about museums is that we have people that work like so at Shedd, for example, we have people that work there that have science backgrounds or interested in science, but that fill a variety of roles. So we still need graphic designers, accountants, um, exhibit designers. So there's a lot of different roles you can fill at these kinds of organizations. If you have broad variety of interests.
It's really very, very helpful to hear. We're always encouraging students to kind of keep an open mind
Hmm.
about where they might work. Well, I have one more question because
Yeah.
I, like many people, have become such a huge fan during the pandemic. But do you personally know Wellington the penguin, and what is he like in person?
Yes, I am honored to know
Oh.
Wellington. He is one of the rockhopper penguins that live at Shedd Aquarium. You can always tell we have two species of penguins that live at the aquarium. Rockhoppers like Wellington that have those yellow crested feathers, and another species called Magellanic penguins that do not have those yellow feathers but have a black stripe across their chest. And the Magellanics like to spend a lot of time swimming and interacting. And Wellington, the rockhoppers, they're called rockhoppers because they like to hop. They're very good at hopping on rocks. And so they spend most of their time kind of in their rocky cliff area, sort of chilling on the on the cliffs and the rocks above the water.
Well, I'm delighted that you know him in person. And
Yeah, and so it's been really cool, yeah, to see him and his friends go on adventures throughout this and gain a really big social media following. But that kind of stuff is actually things that were going on even before the pandemic. Our animal care staff always like to take our animals to places and have experiences that are different because it's really enriching and provides some variety in their routine. So there'll be more to come, I'm sure.
very, very exciting. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This is Juliann Krupa from the Shedd Aquarium. I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Is there anything else you wanted me to mention or anything I missed?
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.